The night was thick with tension as Mirabel stood before her parents, her small frame quivering under the crushing weight of their condemnation. "You've brought shame upon this family." Lono's voice thundered, his words sharp as daggers, cutting deep into her heart. Mirabel's knees wobbled beneath her as she whispered, "I didn't mean to," her voice faltering as tears streaked down her face. Evelyn crossed her arms, her expression twisted with disgust. "You didn't mean to? You're 14, Mirabel. How could you let this happen? Pregnant at your age?" Mirabel's hands trembled violently as she tried to explain. "Mom, I was scared. I didn't know what to do." But before she could say another word, Evelyn cut her off sharply. "Don't call me Mom. You've dishonored this family. Pack your things. Get out." Mirabel turned to Lono, her eyes filled with desperate pleading. "Please, Dad." But Lono, his face set in stone, slammed his hand down onto the table, his voice cold. "We don't have a daughter anymore. Leave." Her heart shattered into a million pieces. Mirabel turned and fled into the pouring rain, her body racked with sobs, the whispers of neighbors following her like dark, judgmental shadows. Cold, hungry, and drenched, she wandered through the empty streets, the rain seeping through her thin clothes, chilling her to the bone. Desperation clawed at her as she sought refuge. She spotted an abandoned building, its cracked walls offering some semblance of shelter. A gruff man blocked her path. "Get lost, girl. We don't want trouble here." Her stomach growled in protest, but there was no time to argue. She backed away, feeling smaller than ever. Finally, she found a bench in the park. Curling up, she hugged her stomach protectively, the harsh cold biting at her skin. The night was merciless, but exhaustion overtook her, and she drifted into an uneasy, restless sleep. Later, footsteps and muffled voices woke her from her slumber. A group of men loomed in the shadows, their intentions all too clear. Panic surged in Mirabel's chest as she bolted, her feet slipping on the wet ground. She ran, heart pounding, until she found a narrow alley and collapsed under the shelter of a tree. "Why does everyone hate me?" she whispered, her voice cracking, tears mixing with the rain. Fever and despair gripped her, and in her anguish, she lost consciousness. "Child, wake up." A gentle, warm voice pulled her from the haze. Mirabel blinked, her blurred vision focusing on the kind eyes of an elderly woman. "I don't know where to go," Mirabel murmured weakly, her voice barely audible as she collapsed into the woman's comforting embrace. The woman, Martha, carried her to a small bakery that smelled of fresh bread, warmth wrapping around her like a safety blanket. "Eat," Martha urged, setting a bowl of soup in front of her. Mirabel hesitated, her hand trembling as she asked, "Why are you helping me?" Martha smiled softly, her eyes full of compassion. "Because everyone deserves kindness, especially when the world turns its back on them." For the first time in days, Mirabel felt safe. In time, Mirabel began helping around the bakery, sweeping the floors and learning to knead dough, all under Martha's patient guidance. Despite her deep gratitude, the cruelty of the small town never seemed to relent. "That's the girl who got kicked out," sneered Esteban, a local grump, one morning. Martha shot him a glare. "If you don't have anything kind to say, Esteban, then take your business elsewhere." But the whispers and harsh stares weighed heavily on Mirabel's heart. One evening, as she stepped outside the bakery, a group of men harassed her. "Get inside," Martha shouted, wielding a broom like a weapon. The men scattered, and Martha wrapped her arms around Mirabel, holding her close. "Don't let them win, child." As time passed, Mirabel found herself growing stronger, determined to rise above her circumstances. She tried seeking work to ease the burden on Martha, only to face rejection after rejection. "We don't hire people like you," one shopkeeper said with a sneer, his tone dripping with disdain. Humiliated, defeated, and in tears, Mirabel returned to the bakery. "I can't do this anymore," she sobbed to Martha. Martha placed a firm hand on her shoulder, her voice full of quiet strength. "You're stronger than you think, Mirabel. Remember, you're not just living for yourself anymore. That child inside you needs you to keep going. Those words sparked something deep inside Mirabel, a renewed sense of determination that would carry her forward. Years later, Mirabel returned to the town she once fled. Time had transformed her from a frightened girl into a poised, confident businesswoman. She stood beside her son, Daniel, now 14, both walking through the bustling streets of the town toward her parents' home. When Evelyn opened the door, her face pale and full of shock, Mirabel spoke with calm authority. "Hello, Mother. I thought it was time for you to meet your grandson." Daniel stepped forward, extending his hand with politeness. "Nice to meet you, Grandma." Lono appeared, his expression unreadable as he stared at her. "Is that you, Mirabel?" he asked, his voice thick with disbelief. "You've changed. We made a mistake," he stammered. Mirabel nodded. "I've forgiven you, but I came back for closure, not for your approval. I've built a life for myself and my son, despite everything." Before leaving, she handed Evelyn a package. "This bread represents resilience and forgiveness. It's a reminder that broken things can be mended with time and effort." Evelyn sat on the porch, staring off into the distance, the weight of Mirabel's words echoing in her mind. "I came to show you that no amount of rejection or hardship could break me," Mirabel had said. Lono joined her, his face softened with regret. "She's not the same girl we sent away." Evelyn's voice cracked as she spoke. "We abandoned her when she needed us the most. We judged her, shamed her, and yet, she forgave us." Lono nodded solemnly. "We need to make this right, Evelyn. We need to tell her how sorry we are, not for her forgiveness, but because she deserves to hear it." The pair set out to find Mirabel. They asked neighbors, old friends, and anyone who might know where she had been. Most directed them to the bakery Mirabel had built in Martha's honor. When they arrived, the warm, bustling atmosphere of the bakery took them by surprise. Customers sat, enjoying pastries and coffee, while Mirabel moved behind the counter with effortless grace, her face calm and radiant. Evelyn whispered, awe and shame in her voice. "She built all this." Lono cleared his throat, nervous. "Let's speak to her." As the crowd thinned, Lono and Evelyn made their way to the counter. Mirabel looked up, her expression unreadable. "Mom, Dad, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. Evelyn clasped her hands nervously. "We came to see you."
To talk.
Mirabel nodded. "I'm listening." Lono stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. "We were wrong about everything. We let our pride, our shame, and our fear dictate how we treated you. We're sorry for abandoning you when you needed us most." Evelyn's voice trembled. "Seeing you now, knowing what you've accomplished, it's clear we were blind. You've built a beautiful life for yourself, Mirabel. We're so proud of you." Mirabel folded her arms, her gaze steady. "Proud now? After all these years? Do you have any idea what I went through?" Evelyn wiped away her tears, guilt written all over her face. "No, Mirabel. We don't. And that's on us. We don't expect your forgiveness. But we want you to know how deeply sorry we are." Mirabel softened slightly and gestured for them to sit. "I'll tell you this much. Everything I am today, I owe to Martha. She found me when I had no one. She fed me, taught me, gave me hope when the world had turned its back on me, including you." She paused, her voice steady. "She's my mother now. She treated me like a daughter when my own parents didn't." Lano lowered his head in shame. "We don't deserve to be called your parents, but please, know that we regret every moment we failed you." Just then, Martha entered the bakery, her face lighting up as she saw Mirabel. "Busy day, darling?" she asked, her voice warm and familiar. Mirabel smiled. "Always, Mama." Martha noticed Lono and Evelyn and raised an eyebrow. "These must be your parents?" "Yes," Mirabel replied, her tone neutral. "They're here to apologize." Martha's expression softened. "Well, it's about time." She turned to Lono and Evelyn. "I don't know what you said to her all those years ago, but I saw the broken girl you left behind. And I saw her rebuild herself. She's strong because she had to be. Lono and Evelyn exchanged guilty glances. "We know," Lono said softly. "And we're grateful she had you." Mirabel stood with her arms crossed. "I spent years thinking I needed your love, your approval. But I've realized something I don't. I've built a life I'm proud of. And I did it without you." Evelyn's tears flowed freely. "Mirabel, we don't deserve your forgiveness. But we're asking for it anyway. Please, let us be a part of your life again." Mirabel sighed deeply, her heart heavy. "I've already forgiven you. Carrying anger only hurts me, and I won't let it hold me back. But understand this, for forgiveness to mean anything, it doesn't mean things go back to how they were. Martha is the mother I needed, and she always will be." Evelyn nodded, her face crumpling in relief. "We understand, and we're thankful for any chance to know you again." Lono reached for Mirabel's hand. "We've lost so much time, but we'd like to start over, if you'll let us." Martha placed a hand on Mirabel's shoulder. "Sometimes forgiveness isn't about the person asking, it's about freeing yourself. You've grown into an incredible woman, Mirabel. Your heart is big enough for that." Mirabel nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. She turned to her parents. "I'll let you into my life, but you have to earn a place in Daniel's. He deserves grandparents who love him unconditionally, not ones who judge him for his origins." Lono and Evelyn nodded fervently. "We'll do whatever it takes," Evelyn promised. In the weeks that followed, Lono and Evelyn began visiting the bakery regularly. They got to know Daniel, who was polite but cautious. Mirabel watched from a distance, her heart conflicted but hopeful, as she saw her parents trying, truly trying, to rebuild the bridges they had burned. One evening, as they sat together over coffee, Lono turned to Mirabel. "You've built something beautiful here, Mirabel. We're honored to witness it." Mirabel smiled faintly. "It wasn't easy, but it taught me that even broken things can be mended, if both sides are willing." Martha, sitting nearby, raised her cup. "To healing." Mirabel clinked her cup with hers. "To healing." For the first time in years, Mirabel felt the warmth of a family, new and old, beginning to grow. Mirabel's journey didn't end with her return. She expanded Martha's bakery into a chain, using her success to mentor young women who were struggling, just as she once had. As she stood in her bustling shop one evening, Daniel by her side, she reflected on the life she had built. Her pain had become her strength, and her story was now a beacon of hope for others who felt lost. "No matter how dark the night, there's always a dawn waiting to break," she told Daniel. Mirabel's resilience had turned her tragedy into triumph, proving that even in the face of wickedness, redemption is always possible.